So everybody you know is getting married except you. Well, don't worry, you're not alone. Today, Valerie Cabrera Krause is here. She's the author of The Bridal Wave, a survival guide to the everyone I know is getting married years. She's going to tell you how to cope and not feel like something is wrong with you. Great to have you here today, Valerie.
Thanks for having me.
You know, this subject really touches a nerve with people. I was really surprised, even tonight here at the studio, when I was telling people what we were going to be doing. The guys, it's not just women, the guys were saying, yeah, they feel like something's wrong with them. People are getting married, all their friends are getting married, and they're not getting married, and they think something's wrong with them.
Absolutely. I think one of the best things we've heard from readers is, thank gosh, I'm so glad to know I'm not alone. And I think this is something that women don't feel very comfortable talking about. So I'm really glad we gave a voice to this kind of time in your life when all your friends are getting married but you, and you start to kind of turn yourself inside out and wonder, what's wrong with me? And if you're not looking at yourself, you have plenty of friends and family who are wondering, when are you going to get married?
Right, exactly. I think you say, what the helpful friends, or, they all mean well, but that dreaded question is, so when are you going to get married?
Exactly. It's funny because they often ask the women, and, usually in our society, the men ask the woman. So it's kind of awkward when you're at a wedding and someone says, so when are you going to make it official? And you're thinking, I don't know, ask him, I'm waiting for him to ask me.
Yeah, in the book you do seem to go for the idea that the woman is waiting for the guy, so you don't think that part has changed.
I think that some people do it differently, but I think overall in our society that's still the way it goes, and especially for a woman who's probably in the bridal wave, she probably tends to be someone who is waiting for the guy to propose and has that in her mind.
So if she asks and there's something really wrong because she's thinking, so why do I have to ask the guy to marry me?
Oh, well, once you ask, it doesn't count anymore.
Oh.
I think that you can't ask. That's my personal thing, because I personally have my own issue in the bridal wave where I was a timeline girl and was obsessed with getting married by a certain time, but I kind of felt like if I pressured him, then it somehow wouldn't count as much.
And does that work? Because I think that would almost, as you kind of say in the book too, I think would almost make the guy run the other way.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
If you keep dropping hints, if the guy isn't planning on getting married and you keep dropping hints about, should we go to Vegas this weekend?
Yeah.
You probably get a fast exit on that one.
Exactly. Not exactly a turn on for guys, I don't think.
And so you did have your own timeline because you talk about, you want to tell us what that is? How that works? We
call the timeline, it's sort of that I always thought I'd be by now, or, I always thought I'd be married by now, and I think we all have that to some extent, and we call that the timeline. And for me, I was obsessed with getting married by 27, like a crazy person. And, I was single for a lot of my 20s, so the timeline kind of died down, but once I started dating my now husband, the timeline just came back full force, and I was all about making it on time. So when I did get engaged, I pretended like I wanted a short engagement, but really, I wanted to get married by 20, before I was 28. Exactly.
So what was going to happen if you turned 27 and weren't married?
You know what? It's funny because I also thought, I'm going to have kids by 30, and not to age myself, but that hasn't happened. And I think I just realized that, I made up these ages when I was 15, 16 years old, and I had no idea what it was like to be an adult and what it was like to be in a relationship, and you just can't plot your life on a timeline.
Well, and I think that's the thing, that on the one hand, I understand where the timeline comes because I have my timeline, everybody has their timeline, meaning, these days we all have our 5-year plans and our 10-year plans and your business goals and objectives and, all of that. But yet, as you said, love doesn't quite work that way. You can't just, you can climb the corporate ladder, but that doesn't necessarily mean that going out to 10 bars tonight, you're going to meet Mr. Right and then, or Mrs. Right, and, and go on to...
I think, unfortunately, some women try to force their life into that timeline and end up sticking with the wrong guys or, marrying the wrong person just to make it to the altar on time. And what we really want women to know is that marriage is not a race, and just because you get married at a certain time, like, it's just the beginning of another leg. And if you're really forcing it to happen, you're probably going to be getting married a couple of times in your life.
Yeah, which is why I think one reason the divorce rate is so high is that people do have this expectation. I have to admit, I guess I don't know if I've blown, I have blown the timeline, I guess, but you talk in the book about the guy who's kind of oblivious to the questions that just kind of ignores them, and that's always the way I've dealt with it because, I don't know, it does almost, I don't want to say that people are obsessed with it, but I think, well, here's the thing, when I say the guys worry about it too, I was talking to my trainer the other night, Chad, and he said he feels it. He's 26, and I said what the topic was, and he said, oh yeah, I said, all my friends are getting married. He felt the pressure, but he said, but he's young, he's working on his business, he wants to develop that. And I feel the same way. I always say, I'm married to the show. I definitely have some very specific things that I'm working on, and so, but yet, so many people though seem to be defined by, It used to be, I think you turn 18, you graduate from high school, and you get married. Well, I grew up in a smaller town in Ohio, outside of Cleveland, and I swear to God, I think most of the people did.
Yeah.
They graduated from high school and they got married, and they're in the small town. That was not me. That was never me. So,
well, I think today it's confusing because I think we're raised. You're saying you're married to your show, and I think what's confusing for a lot of us is that we're told you can be anything you want, especially for girls. You can do anything you want, and you don't need to just get married. But then you get to a certain age, and all of a sudden, people are kind of wondering, when are you going to get married? Or if you've been in a relationship for 5 years, it's like...
Well, and that's the thing, what you say, despite the questions, it's not even grandma saying, when are you going to get married? You're saying to yourself, why am I not married?
Well, we kind of go through life stages at the same time as our friends. We go to high school together, we go to college together, we all get our license together, and then you get out and kind of people start taking these different paths, and I think you start to feel like, wait a minute, why are all my friends getting married and I'm not? Am I falling behind? Is there something wrong with me? Am I going to die alone and be eaten by cats?
Oh yeah, Francine, the makeup woman, and I were talking before the show, and I was telling her that now it's to the point where friends of mine from high school are sending their kids off to college. I think this year for about the first year. So it's I guess I blew the timeline.
Yeah, you're way behind on your timeline on that one.
But you are married.
I am married, and my co-author is not married. So we came at the book from very different perspectives.
I wanted to know whether it's unfortunate she's out of town. She's in New York, right?
She's based in New York. Yeah.
New York. Okay, but if she'd been here tonight, I would have been so brazen to ask her whether you gave her a guilt trip by getting married and she's not married.
Well, she did go through a ton of time in her life that she writes about in the book where all of her friends were getting married and I was one of them, and she was in the worst breakup of her life and thinking that she had missed the boat, and she had her own kind of idea of, oh my gosh, I'm really falling behind. But I think the thing about the Bridal Wave is you're in it for a few years and then you kind of come out of it and you can look back. But she's living with her boyfriend, and I can't tell you how many people have asked, even, talking about the book, people are asking her, so when are you going to get married? And when is he going to propose? And you just can't
I think she said that you were one of them retaliated by saying you'd put the people in the book, though, if they write it. So that shuts some people up, but not everybody, right?
Exactly. Well, I think while writing the book, her parents tried to stay mum because they knew that anything they said could be used against them. So
you got to watch about the authors and...
Yeah.
So how is your timeline? But you said you don't have the kids yet, though. Well, may I ask how old you are? I wouldn't ask ordinarily, but since the
I'm
whole
32.
Age, 32, okay. So you were originally planning to have kids by 30.
Baby by 30, and I had a work back schedule. So, baby by 30 meant pregnant at 29, but you want to be married, for a couple of years, and that's where married at 27 came in. Because I thought if I was married by 27, I could get to baby by 30.
So you've kind of given the timeline up a little bit.
I gave up the timeline. I just, life doesn't work on a timeline, and thank goodness it doesn't, because how boring would that be?
Here's to that. We'll be right back with Valerie Cabrera Krause, author of The Bridal Wave, right after this. And we are back with Valerie Cabrera Krause today, author of The Bridal Wave. Okay, you said something interesting during the commercial break. You said you didn't include men, and you thought about it, but why? Why didn't you include men? I want to know.
Well, we didn't include men, and we did think about it. And that person, we call him the steamroller, is the guy we talked to who said, "Oh, I just ignore it all." And I think, going into it, I don't think we thought that men were affected as much by the Bridal Wave, but during the writing process, we realized they were. But we just felt like we had to keep the focus of the book.
I really would have assumed that guys were a bit less concerned because you think women, have the biological clock ticking maybe. But as I say, I was surprised. The more guys I talked to, most of them said they felt it.
Yeah.
It's the groom wave, the bride and groom wave. Everybody's getting married and you're not, something's wrong with you. And
maybe in some way we played a part of that kind of cultural stereotype that it's the woman who always wants to get married, And I think writing this book we realized that there are a lot of guys feeling the pressure.
But in general, people today are getting married quite a bit later, though.
They are, but the national average is still, I believe it's 25 for women and 27, I think living on the coast sometimes we get a skewed perspective. But women, people are waiting longer to get married, and I think the divorce rates are actually dropping a bit because we're taking time to figure ourselves out and what do we want and getting our careers in order first. But
I thought it was interesting that you said, though, that the length of engagements is up.
Right.
So that's interesting. But yet the rate at which people break off engagements, maybe because of that, is also up, right?
Yeah, we think that's an interesting new trend. It's almost like this kind of new way of going steady is to get engaged, almost like you're pulling someone off the market. But there is like a really big increase in the rate of canceled engagements, and it's not that surprising anymore to hear about a canceled engagement.
Yeah, but so it's surprising then that the divorce rate is so high, because you would think, on the one hand, I like the fact that people are thinking about it beforehand. I've often said, and you say in the book, if you're gonna, you can be the runaway bride and runaway, but if you're gonna call it off, it's better to do it before the wedding than to get the annulment or, you know,
that's that new Hollywood trend of the annulment, like it never happened, you know?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm actually, like I say, but it's interesting that not only, but that's not lowering the divorce rate. The divorce rate is, you know, I think that's going up all the time too. So you got more people breaking off engagements and more people getting divorced.
And then more people having like 2-year engagements and really long engagements. But you know, the number of actual weddings has decreased, but it's the wedding industry that keeps on increasing. I believe it's at $125 billion.
They're trying to hold on to what they got, you know, they don't want to let it go.
We call them the wedding industrial complex, you know, I mean, you know, there's all these news stories about women aren't getting married as much recently in the New York Times, but you go to any magazine rack and all you see are tons of magazines.
So are they literally pumping advertising money and stuff into it to get that message out there that you should be?
$125 billion, that's a lot of noise, you know.
And it's up over, it's increased?
It's increased. I'm not exactly sure. I want to say it's increased about 1%, but that's a lot of money, you know. That's a lot of people interested in you getting married.
The thing that I thought was interesting about this book, though, too, is you're not here to tell people how to find a man or a woman or anything.
Absolutely not.
You were literally just talking about how to cope with what everybody calls you. So how does it start? You get the call that says it's the IGBN call?
The IGBN call, the I've Got Big News call. And then you just know, you automatically know what that is. And so we try to we offer women some real advice, you know. I think a lot of times you get that call and you're thinking, oh great, you know, there goes another friend, and you might be feeling, you know, jealous or angry, but we try to
the woman on the timeline has like heart palpitations or the blood pressure goes up or the nervousness because you know it's coming. You know?
Or the woman who's been dating her guy for 10 years and thinks, you know, they were only dating for 3 years and they're engaged and what's wrong with me? But we offer women real advice about how to handle that call, and no matter how you're feeling, you say, I'm so happy for you, and then
no matter how much you have to force it, you gotta play the role a little, okay.
And one of our pieces of advice that goes through the book is that people love to talk about themselves. So if you're feeling bad and inside is this kind of crazy voice, just say, have you thought about what you're gonna do? Gosh, there's so much to plan, and just get them talking, and then you can, you know, tune out. And
indirectly, I guess you can have your revenge because you start bringing up some of the details they're going to have to deal with. So you can deflate their balloon in a polite way, you know, like.
Exactly. And then after the call starts, you know, the save the dates and all the showers and parties, and that's a financial drain. So we really want to kind of help women with how to save money and offer tips on how not to go broke on someone else's wedding. Because at wedding season, if you're going to 6 weddings, you know, all the rise of the destination wedding and the gifts and the showers and the this and the bachelorette can really add up.
And I love to, well, you mentioned, you know, it's not just the fact that, okay, partly you're thinking, why am I not getting married when everybody else is? But you say too, though, you might feel like you're losing a friend. And you say that, I love the phrase you use, the term, what, libridamized?
Oh, libridamized.
So what happens to a woman? And I suppose a guy, I think that part is probably a little bit different with the guys. But what's libridamized? What happens to a woman when she's getting married?
Well, we'd like to draw a line between the bride.
And this is coming from a woman,
exactly.
So don't
No, this
call
is not
me.
the Bridezilla, you know, the evil Bridezilla. I think that would be more interesting. If my friends became Bridezillas and went crazy, I might want to watch that. But the problem is, they become these boring bridal drones, and we call them libridamized, and all they want to talk about is chair covers and cake flavors, and am I going to have a fondue fountain? And it's just boring as sin.
And the invitations and the color and it's like pulling out the photos of the grandkids to everybody when they're falling asleep. And
yeah, and you know, I had a friend who was invited to a post-honeymoon slideshow where she could view 1,000 photos of the wedding and honeymoon. And so we like to say that when the last thank you note's been sent out, hopefully your friend will come back to you and realize that, gosh, she was a boring woman.
So just email them, and then when they email them, delete. Nobody knows.
Exactly. No, this was a party.
Oh, wow, yeah. Well, that's what I mean. They get them to email it.
Exactly. Yeah, just email it to me. I'll look at it on my own time.
Or else do what I do in meetings like that, just sleep in the back, you know. They wake up at the end, oh my God, that was lovely. I loved it.
But it definitely is hard when your friends just become really boring, and you want to support them, so we kind of give ways. One tactic we have for dealing with the libridamized is we call it the kind nurse. So if you're in the wedding party, one thing to do is to really get involved with her and try to be a big help. And then, you know, that you can do cake tastings. Nothing's wrong with tasting cake. You can have your say in the bridesmaid's dress so that you look cute, you know, and you can also make sure that you're in a good table. So there's different ways to deal with the libridamized friend.
I love those. The other term you used, which was frenemy. Again, kind of putting out the competitive aspect, I think, where again, you know, maybe in that case it is somebody more that you don't like than somebody you do like, but even with friends, I suppose you have that
kind of competition.
Keeping up with the Joneses, and again, you know, even if it's your best friend, it's like, oh my God, she's getting married before I am.
Yeah, I mean, you can't help but compare yourself, and I think that's normal. What we want to tell women is it's normal to compare yourself. You just can't, you know, make that force you into bad decisions or going crazy or losing friends or marrying a loser.
So you have to kind of get into it some, because if you pull back too much, and show them how distasteful you find it, you're
Yeah.
going to lose a friend, right? I mean, you know, nobody's
Yeah.
going to appreciate that. Or as you say, I think you come off looking like the bitch or something because they
Yeah.
think, oh, you know, she's just jealous, or, you know, she can't get a guy, so, you know.
And you
she's,
want to
know.
keep them friends, because when it's your turn, you want someone to do all these boring tasks with you.
Yeah.
So
That's your payback, you said, right?
Exactly.
You know, someday you'll put them through the same hell that they
Exactly.
put you through, so.
exactly. So, you know, but definitely like the Bridemize, it's funny because all we hear about is Bridezilla, but I've yet to meet a Bridezilla, and I'm
So you don't
interested
think that's the real, it's more just the drone syndrome that people go through.
and there are a lot of details to figure out, but gosh, is it boring.
And how much, you give the figures, I think, how much planning do people do for wedding these days, and how much do they cost?
I think the average wedding's around $27,000.
$27,000.
Yeah, and if you live in New York or LA, that seems cheap, you know, like what a steal. So, I mean, you have to understand.
You know, see, I immediately did what you did in the book. You have a chart telling what else people could do with that money, and that's what I start thinking is, gee, that's a nice vacation in Europe.
But I think it offers like a bit of insight into why she's so boring, because, you know, this is her biggest day, and we're always told this is your biggest day, and everyone's judging you. And
what do you think of that? Is it the biggest day of your life?
Gosh, am I in trouble if I say it's not? I mean, it's a big day, but is it the biggest day of my life? I hope not. But I mean, I think.
But is that the expectation that people have this? You know, that you have to fulfill that fantasy, that it's got to be.
I think it is. We just saw a story last week that now there's these Disney-inspired wedding gowns, and you know, people are really playing out this.
Mouse ears and.
Hopefully, it's more inspired by than that.
Okay.
It's been the princesses, and so I think women do view this as the day to play out their fantasies. And part of me feels like, gosh, you know, what's the harm in that? If you have one day to do it, but it can get really crazy, and I don't know about you, but I've seen some pretty interesting choices.
Well, and you also say, though, people forget that the wedding is not the marriage.
Exactly. I think sometimes women get so caught up in the planning that, you know, they're not thinking, am I with the right person?
Yeah, you
is
still
this
have
what
to
I want to
live with
do?
the guy,
Yeah.
You know?
And, you know, there's this phenomenon called the starter marriage, and I think a lot of those.
Meaning,
believe it's, let's see, it's women who have been married for 5 years or under and no kids. So you're divorced in under 5 years with no kids. It's considered a starter marriage.
Starter marriage. Just getting.
It's like your first one.
You know?
Yeah, and I think a lot of those women were probably victims of the bridal wave and made bad choices based on a timeline or pressure from friends, family.
Right, and that's the thing you say. One of the big mistakes people make is, okay, on the one hand, you can feel like, oh my God, I'm a loser, I can't get married, can't get anybody. But people will marry the first person around just to meet their timeline.
Yeah, and then you probably won't be your last marriage or won't be a very happy one. So we really want, you know, we want people to know you're not alone and it's okay, but don't go marrying that loser, you know.
I always think of what a woman said in college, or practically a girl at the time, really, but it was early in college. She was talking about her boyfriend, and she said something like, well, I guess that's, or, you know, I always have these dreams, or I guess that's the best I can do, or something. I thought, gee, I'm glad I'm not her boyfriend going around talking like that.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know, what kind of, you know, how do you settle for second best when you're getting married? I mean, if you really feel that way.
Mr. Comfortable is a guy that's like, nothing's wrong with him, but maybe nothing's right with him either, you know, and he's just so easy that you stick with him. And I think that a lot of women stay in bad relationships because they feel like, you know, maybe they're 29 and they figure, well, this is it. I guess this is what I'm supposed to do.
And then there's the feeling, though, if you break it off or you don't get married, that, oh my God, I wasted those years that, you know, I invested 6 years, but there better be a marriage payoff somewhere.
Yeah, it's like you feel like if you don't end it with a ring that somehow those weren't valuable years. And obviously that's crazy because you've learned so much about yourself and you've had a good relationship, you know. And
well, and you may be saving you about 4 or 5 years in divorce court.
Yeah, maybe $27,000.
Yeah. We'll be right back with Valerie Krause, author of The Bridal Wave, right after this. We are back with Valerie Cabrera Krause today talking about the bridal wave when everybody you know is getting married and you're the only loser who's not. I shouldn't say that, should I? I'm not married. But I think it's, well, we think that women have made progress and you talk about, you know, again, there's kind of a contradiction there that, again, you know, the progress in employment and everything else. But yet I always say, people say, you know, Jane Austen, all the women were just living, I think they don't appreciate how intelligent the women were in her novels, and they think that they were just looking for a guy the whole time. But these days you have these modern career women, they go on the Bachelor or the Bachelorette, I have to think about which way that is, and, you know, line up for 25 guys, and I think women seem as desperate today or more desperate than the old days that people make fun of and say that, oh my God, they actually courted the guy for a few months and they didn't just live together and have kids before they got married. And you know, I mean, have we made as much progress in every area as people think? Or?
Well, you know, it's funny. We heard from a reader who told us that she has been with her boyfriend for, like, I think 5 years, and she wants to buy a place. So she was looking into buying her own house, and her mom told her, that if she bought her own house, she would scare him off, and that instead she should take a gardening or a cooking class. You know, it's like just so crazy. It's just, it hasn't really changed that much. I think that, you know, despite the advances we've made, there's still this pressure
And
to
plan
win.
B, right, well, you can always go on the reality show, right?
Oh yeah, I'm going to race for the ring. And it's funny, the first show, I think it was Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire. I think there was this kind of shock in the culture of, gosh, what's really going on? That women are doing this, but The Bachelor's still on, and it's in Paris, so.
Really? I did. Well, and now don't you
Not that I
assume,
watch.
what I figure is they make a plan in advance, because don't you win money if you get married? Because what I'd say is, look, okay, we'll get money, we'll get married, we'll split the money, then have a nice trip or something. You know, I think I'm assuming there's some kind of negotiating going on, because I can't believe that these people are really.
I know. Well, there's that one couple, they're actually still together. So I think other than
one.
Trista, no, I think her name's Trista, they've had like a pretty bad failure rate of engagements from those shows. But I mean, well, the the rose ceremony, it's just so tacky and crazy. And
Right. I would think that you'd end up in divorce court more than anything for being on one of those reality shows.
Well, what was it with Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire? I don't even think he was a millionaire. I think he turned out to be
think that, yeah.
maybe an ex-con.
Oh yeah, well, and then you've got Richard Hatch, who ended up in prison, talking about the reality show. I don't know, I'm not sure the whole reality thing is such a great way to go.
Yeah, maybe not for finding a husband, maybe not so much.
Yeah. So how do you, well, you also talk about, you have the emergency signs, I think.
Oh, we have our emergency kit.
Yeah.
That every woman should have with her at all times. We have the Lobotomy blinders, which we spoke about earlier, and her bitch extinguisher, I believe as we call it. And that's for, you know, extinguishing both yourself and always kind of maintaining your composure and friendship and not letting that inner bitch out.
No matter how
and then
tired you are, yeah.
I think something really important is the friendship net, because I think it's a time to really open up to your friends. And a lot of women don't share these feelings. And I think, you know, that's who your friends are there for you. And I think a lot of times you can just be honest about how you're feeling. If your friend is always with her guy and not giving you any time, let her know how you're feeling. And I'm sure she would love to spend time with you.
And I think you said, seek out the single friends as well and do things with them.
Yeah, seek out single friends. And if you truly have no single friends, get some new friends. Because you're not going to meet somebody playing Scrabble on Saturday night at game night with your married friends.
And then, you know, I'm thinking of something that Francine said though too, and I think even you beforehand, that in a way that, but so even once if you meet the timeline and you get married, but then the next thing is having the kids, you start feeling the pressure to have the kids, and are you on track with that? And, but what I thought was very interesting, and I didn't realize, so your alternate, the modern suggestion, I guess though, is to go to the sperm bank.
Yeah. Well, you know, we tell women, of course, it's nobody's dream to go to the sperm bank, but if you really want kids, and that's kind of why you want to get married, is to have kids. If you know you really, really want to have kids, and maybe you're at an age where it's kind of a crucial decision time, well, that is an option. And just because you marry someone and have kids with them doesn't mean that they're going to be around to raise the kids with you. So if that's your goal, there are kind of other ways. There's adoption and sperm bank. I mean, it's not the dream, but
gives you a few options. You've got, one is Meet Mr. Right, number 2 is go on a reality TV show, and 3 is the sperm bank.
Maybe the new reality TV show could be Who Wants to Be My Child's Father.
I have heard about Dutch reality shows where, yeah, you'd be surprised.
Really?
There probably is somewhere out there a reality show about.
Isn't that where they have the nude telecaster or newscasters too? So.
I don't think I can even say on the air what I've heard about. The Dutch have really pushed their TV shows. So. Well, in our final few minutes, is there any advice you'd have, again, for people, men and women, coping with this, and the inspiration to tell them they are okay, there's nothing wrong with them?
Absolutely, and if you're feeling slammed by a busy wedding season and you look at your calendar and every weekend's full of somebody else's happy events, take some time for yourself. It's okay to say no. You know, if you're invited to a wedding and you get the invitation maybe just 2 weeks before, you're probably a C-lister anyway. Just say no, send the gift, and take the weekend for yourself. You know, it's important. I don't think that you need to fly all around the country for every wedding. And
I love your tip about saving money, though, or economizing. You say you can always sell the dress on eBay, number one. Reuse it or sell it on eBay, right?
Exactly. Get together with the other bridesmaids and sell it together. And there's also some great charities that give the dresses to girls, underprivileged girls who need it for prom dresses. And I think they'll kind of
recycle,
kind of do a pretty in pink thing with that and recycle them and, you know, give them to people who could use them.
Somebody had some happiness out of it.
Exactly. Or just burn it, you know.
Well, thank you very much for being here today, Valerie.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. The book is The Bridal Wave, How to Survive That Everybody I Know is Getting Married Except Me Years. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.